Book name Let Her Go. Written and published by Prashant. Introduction. The world was silent when she walked out the door. The only sound was the soft click of the lock, a sound that should have been insignificant, yet it echoed like a thunderclap in my ears. It was the sound of an ending I wasn't ready for, yet one I had brought upon myself. They say you don't know the value of something until it's gone. I always thought that was a cliché, but clichés have a way of wrapping truths we don't want to face. When she left, I didn't just lose her. I lost the part of myself that believed in second chances, that believed love could conquer anything. This is the story of how I let her go, and how I found myself in the process. Chapter 1. The Departure. The story begins in a quiet, dimly lit apartment. The protagonist, a young adult whose life appears ordinary on the surface, sits alone on the living room floor. The atmosphere is heavy with the weight of loss and introspection. It's the kind of silence that doesn't just fill the room, but seems to seep into the soul. The protagonist's surroundings reflect their emotional state. The coffee table is cluttered with forgotten items. An empty coffee mug with a faint lipstick mark of hers, an old photo of the couple at a carnival, and a pair of earrings she accidentally left behind. Each object feels like a ghost of the past, whispering stories of love and laughter that now seem distant. The narrative is rich with sensory details. Outside, rain taps softly against the window, a sound that would have once been comforting, but now feels like nature itself is mourning. Inside, the ticking of the clock becomes unbearable, a reminder that time moves forward, indifferent to human pain. The protagonist's thoughts are a whirlwind of emotions. Regret takes center stage, but it's accompanied by anger, confusion, and a deep sense of emptiness. They replay the moments leading up to her departure, searching for the exact point where everything went wrong. Was it the argument last week? The countless unspoken words? Or was it something deeper? Something neither of them could name? A flashback interrupts the present. It's a memory of a last time they were truly happy, laughing together on a lazy Sunday morning. The contrast between then and now is stark, almost unbearable. The protagonist realizes, perhaps for the first time, that happiness had been slipping away long before she walked out the door. Back in the present, the protagonist picks up their phone and scrolls through old messages. Each one feels like a relic from another life. Sweet, mundane, full of promises that were never fulfilled. Their thumb hovers over the call button, but they hesitate. What would they even say? Words feel futile now, like trying to rebuild a bridge with paper and glue. The chapter ends with the protagonist making a quiet but significant choice. Instead of calling her, they set the phone down and stare into the distance. They realize they're at a crossroads. Either wallow in self-pity or begin the painful process of letting go. For now, they sit in the silence, letting the weight of the moment sink in. This opening chapter sets the tone for the story. It's raw, emotional, and deeply introspective, drawing the reader into the protagonist's inner world. It establishes the stakes. Losing her feels like losing everything, and hints at the journey of self-discovery and healing that lies ahead. Chapter 2. The First Signs. This chapter delves into the subtle and gradual deterioration of the relationship, showcasing how small cracks, when left unchecked, can grow into insurmountable rifts. The narrative balances moments of tenderness and tension, offering a bittersweet glimpse into the highs and lows of love. Scene 1. The Forgotten Promise. The first sign came in the form of a broken promise. It was a small one, a casual agreement to meet for dinner at their favorite restaurant. But when the time came, the protagonist got caught up at work, arriving an hour late, only to find her sitting alone, a half-empty glass of wine in front of her. "I didn't think you were coming," she said quietly, her tone devoid of anger, but heavy with disappointment. "I'm sorry. Things got hectic," the protagonist replied, fumbling for an excuse. She nodded, but the hurt in her eyes was unmistakable. It was the kind of hurt that didn't stem from just one incident, but from a pattern, a history of feelings secondary. Scene 2. Unspoken needs. A lazy Sunday morning should have been peaceful, but silence hung between them like an unwelcome guest. The protagonist sat on the couch, scrolling through their phone, while she moved around the kitchen, the clatter of dishes the only sound. "Do you want to go for a walk?" she asked, her voice tinged with hope. "Maybe later," he murmured, not looking up. She didn't press further, but the slump of her shoulders spoke volumes. She had wanted to connect, to share a moment, but his indifference had turned it into yet another missed opportunity. Scene 3. The disappearing laughter. Their laughter, once the cornerstone of their relationship, began to fade. Conversations that used to be lighthearted now felt like walking on eggshells. Jokes were misunderstood, and teasing remarks cut deeper than intended. One evening, while watching a comedy show they used to love, she burst out laughing at a punchline. But instead of joining in, the protagonist sighed, distracted by his thoughts. Her laughter died mid-breath as she glanced at him, her joy replaced by a flicker of sadness. Scene 4. The late-night argument. The tension finally erupted one night after a casual disagreement turned into a heated argument. What started as a debate about weekend plans spiraled into accusations and unmet expectations. "You never listen to me anymore," she said, her voice trembling. "I do listen, but you're always finding faults," he shot back defensively. The words hung in the air, sharp and unforgiving. Both of them knew it wasn't just about weekend plans. It was about everything that had been left unsaid for months. Reflection and regret. The protagonist, narrating these moments in hindsight, realizes how blind he was to the early warning signs. Each scene serves as a poignant reminder of the small, seemingly inconsequential moments that, when compounded, eroded the foundation of their love. "It wasn't the fights that broke us," he reflects. "It was the silence that followed. The things we left unsaid, the gestures we stopped making, the promises we didn't keep. The first signs weren't loud. They were whispers. Whispers I chose to ignore." This chapter sets the emotional groundwork for the rest of the story, illustrating how love, when not nurtured, can quietly slip away. Would you like me to expand on a specific scene or add additional elements? Chapter 3. A Past Revisited. The journey backward begins with an unplanned trip to a cafe, a place once brimming with shared laughter and quiet moments of connection. The central figure of the narrative, the protagonist, or as we shall now refer to them, the narrator, finds themselves drawn to these familiar haunts not by desire, but by an almost involuntary pull of nostalgia. This chapter serves as an emotional deep dive, where the narrator revisits the milestones of their relationship, interwoven with both fondness and heartbreak. The settings become characters in their own right, vividly evoking memories as they unravel the layers of a bond that once felt unbreakable. Scene 1. The cafe. The cafe's aroma hits the narrator as they step inside, a mixture of freshly ground coffee and baked goods. It's almost too much to bear. It was here, in this very spot, that they first noticed the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her dreams. The memory unfolds like a reel of film, unbidden and raw. The narrator sits at the table where they once shared countless conversations. The etching on the wooden surface, a heart she absent-mindedly carved with a butter knife, remains. It feels frozen in time, mocking the impermanence of everything else. She loved hazelnut lattes, the narrator muses to themselves, ordering one out of habit. When it arrives, the taste feels alien. It doesn't carry the warmth it once did. Scene 2, the park bench. Later, the narrator finds themselves at a park they frequented together. The bench near the lake, where they once planned futures that now feel laughably naive, seems unchanged. A flashback emerges, her laughter echoing as they fed ducks, her hand brushing against theirs, an innocent touch that carried a universe of meaning. The narrator remembers how, during one autumn evening, they had promised to always come back here, no matter what. The weight of that unfulfilled promise crushes them. It wasn't just a bench. It was a witness to their love, a silent keeper of memories. Scene 3, the apartment hallway. The chapter crescendos as the narrator stands in the hallway of the apartment building they once called home. The chipped paint on the doorframe, the faint scent of her favorite candle. It all comes rushing back. The narrator hesitates before stepping closer. They remember their last fight here, voices raised, tears shed, and the piercing silence that followed. The memory hits like a tidal wave, leaving the narrator gasping for air. Yet amidst the pain, there's a realization. These places hold meaning not because of their physicality, but because of the emotions attached to them. The love, the arguments, the shared moments, they live on, etched not in wood or concrete, but in the narrator's heart. Chapter 4, the friend's advice. After the breakup, there was a deep emptiness I couldn't escape. I tried to fill it with distractions, work, late-night movies, even the occasional trip to the gym, but nothing seemed to help. My mind kept wandering back to the same place, replaying the moments before she walked out the door. I couldn't escape the feeling that I had failed her, and in doing so, failed myself. That's when my old friend Alex. We hadn't spoken in months, and truth be told, I had distanced myself from many people since the breakup. When she picked up the phone, her voice felt like a lifeline. It was comforting, familiar, a reminder of who I used to be before everything had unraveled. "Hey, how have you been?" Alex asked, her tone soft but laced with concern. She wasn't one for small talk, and I knew that if she was calling, she had already sensed something was wrong. I hesitated, unsure of how much to say, but in the end, I found myself unloading everything. How I felt lost, how the house felt empty, how I couldn't seem to get over the overwhelming guilt. "She's gone, Alex," I said, the words slipping out like a confession. "I don't know if I can move on. I keep thinking it's my fault, that I pushed her away. I don't know how to fix it." Alex was silent for a moment, and for a brief second, I wondered if I had overshared. But then, she spoke, her voice calm but firm. "Sometimes we can't fix things that are broken," she said. "And sometimes we need to stop trying to. You're beating yourself up over something that's already happened. What's important now is how you move forward." Her words caught me off guard. I had spent so much time blaming myself, dwelling in the past, that I hadn't thought about what came next. "What do you mean?" I asked. "You can't keep living in the what-ifs," she continued. "You can't change what happened, but you can change how you react to it. You have to learn to let go, even when it's the hardest thing you've ever done." I was quiet, unsure of how to respond. Letting go felt like the opposite of everything I wanted. I still loved her. I wanted to fight for us. I wanted to make things right. "I know it's hard," Alex added, as if reading my mind. "But think about it. Are you really holding on to her, or are you holding on to the idea of what you thought you had? Because sometimes the hardest thing is accepting that what you wanted is never going to happen the way you envisioned it." I sat with that thought for a moment. Was I holding on to an ideal, a version of our relationship that only existed in my mind? Or was I holding on to the person, the connection? The distinction was subtle, but it hit me like a wave. Alex's words shifted something inside me. She wasn't telling me to forget her, but she was challenging me to be honest with myself. Maybe I had been holding on to the fantasy of who we were, not the reality of who we had become. How do I even start? I asked, feeling both lost and desperate for clarity. Start by forgiving yourself, she replied. You can't change the past, but you can start making peace with it. It's not about forgetting. It's about giving yourself permission to heal. I swallowed hard, her words sinking in deeper than I expected. Forgiveness wasn't just for her. It was for me. The guilt, the regret, it was suffocating me. And maybe, just maybe, I needed to release it in order to move forward. Alex paused, as if sensing the shift in my tone. And remember, she added, letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It just means you're ready to move forward without dragging the weight of the past with you. I wanted to believe her. I really did, but it felt impossible. How could I just move on when my heart was still so tangled in what we had? I'll try, I said softly, though part of me wasn't convinced. That's all you can do, she said with a small laugh. Just take it one step at a time. And don't be too hard on yourself. Healing isn't linear. Some days will be better than others, but that's okay. As the conversation ended, I felt a flicker of hope. Fragile, but real. Alex had given me more than advice. She had given me permission to feel without being trapped by those feelings. She had reminded me that it was okay to grieve, but that I didn't have to let grief define me. Themes and messages in the chapter. 1. Self-forgiveness. The protagonist realizes that the first step toward healing is forgiving oneself. The guilt of the breakup weighs heavily on them, but their friend Alex teaches them that healing starts with letting go of the past, accepting responsibility without self-punishment, and understanding that nobody can change what has already happened. 2. Acceptance of reality. The protagonist comes to terms with the fact that the relationship is over. They can no longer hold on to the idea of what it was supposed to be and must accept the reality of what is now, part of the process of letting go. 3. Hope for moving forward. Alex reassures the protagonist that letting go doesn't mean giving up on love, but rather allowing space for growth. The advice to take things one day at a time helps shift the protagonist's focus from the past to the future. This chapter serves as a turning point in the protagonist's journey toward healing. The guidance from a trusted friend shifts their perspective from focusing on guilt and regret to considering a more balanced approach to moving forward. Chapter 5. Self-discovery. Self-discovery marks a pivotal point in the protagonist's healing journey, focusing on introspection, personal growth, and regaining a sense of identity beyond the relationship. This chapter explores how the protagonist begins to rebuild themselves after the emotional upheaval of the breakup. It's about taking the first steps toward understanding their past, confronting their flaws, and finding new meaning in life. 1. Journaling and reflection. The protagonist begins journaling as a way to process their thoughts and emotions. At first, they might be unsure or uncomfortable with the process, but over time, writing becomes a therapeutic tool. The protagonist reflects on their past relationship, asking questions like, "What was I afraid of?" or "How did I lose sight of myself?" Journaling allows them to confront unresolved feelings, reflect on their mistakes, and come to terms with the breakup. It becomes a safe space for personal honesty, helping them uncover patterns in their behavior that led to the breakup. 2. Discovering new hobbies. The protagonist starts to engage in new activities or hobbies that they had put aside during the relationship. These pursuits are not only a way to fill the empty time, but also a path to rediscovering their passions and talents. Whether it's painting, learning an instrument, or picking up a sport, these new hobbies symbolize personal renewal. Through these activities, the protagonist begins to feel joy again, separate from their past relationship. It's about reconnecting with who they were before they got lost in the relationship. 3. Therapy or counseling. The protagonist may also decide to seek professional help, perhaps at the encouragement of a friend or out of their own realization that they need guidance. Therapy helps them unpack deeper issues, perhaps childhood wounds, past trauma, or unhealthy relationship patterns. This is a significant step in their emotional growth as they learn to address underlying issues that may have contributed to the relationship's failure. Therapy offers them clarity and a path to healing, helping them break free from negative cycles and gain a new perspective on their life. 4. Support from friends and loved ones. Throughout this chapter, the protagonist leans on close friends for emotional support. A friend might offer advice that shakes up the protagonist's old worldview, maybe encouraging them to stop blaming themselves for the breakup or to embrace their individuality. The protagonist also reconnects with people they may have neglected while in the relationship. These connections remind them that they are loved and valued for who they are, not just as someone's partner. 5. Physical and mental transformation. The protagonist begins to notice a physical and mental shift as they take better care of themselves. They might start exercising, eating better, or practicing mindfulness. These changes not only improve their outward appearance, but also help them feel stronger and more in control of their life. They begin to shed the weight of guilt and self-doubt, realizing that they are worthy of love and happiness on their own terms. Emotional arc of the chapter. At the start of this chapter, the protagonist is still reeling from the breakup, feeling lost and unsure of their identity. But as they embark on this journey of self-discovery, they slowly begin to regain their confidence. They realize that healing isn't just about moving on from a relationship, but also about rediscovering themselves. By the end of the chapter, they feel more grounded, empowered, and hopeful about the future, even though they're not yet over everything. The chapter might end with the protagonist reflecting on their progress. Maybe they sit in a quiet spot, like a park or a cafe, feeling the sun on their face and a sense of calm. They realize that, though they still have work to do, they are no longer defined by the breakup. This marks the beginning of their emotional renewal and a fresh perspective on life, ready for whatever comes next. In summary, Chapter 5. Self-discovery is about the protagonist starting to heal by looking inward, reflecting on their past, and embracing new habits and perspectives. This chapter sets the foundation for their growth, showing that healing is not just about letting go of the past, but about rediscovering who they are and who they want to become. Chapter 6. Facing the Truth focuses on the protagonist confronting hard truths about themselves and the failed relationship. It's a moment of clarity where they stop avoiding the painful realities and start taking full responsibility for their actions and their part in the breakup. This chapter serves as a turning point, where the protagonist fully acknowledges their flaws and missteps, allowing them to make real progress in their healing. 1. Confronting personal flaws. The protagonist has reached a stage where they can no longer deny their own shortcomings. They begin to understand how their behavior, whether it was emotional neglect, selfishness, or fear of vulnerability, played a role in the relationship's collapse. This may be a difficult moment for them as they confront painful truths about their own insecurities or toxic habits. 2. Acknowledging unspoken issues. The protagonist finally recognizes the issues that were never addressed in a relationship, perhaps unresolved conflicts, unspoken expectations, or emotional distance. They realize that both partners contributed to the breakdown, but they stop blaming the other and start taking accountability for their own part in the dynamic. 3. Self-forgiveness. As the protagonist faces these truths, they experience a range of emotions: guilt, regret, and sometimes anger. However, this chapter is also about self-forgiveness. They come to understand that mistakes are part of being human, and while they can't change the past, they have the power to change how they move forward. This is a pivotal moment of growth. 4. A moment of clarity. The protagonist might have a moment of insight, possibly triggered by a conversation with a friend, therapist, or through deep introspection. This moment of clarity helps them understand why the relationship ended and what they need to work on within themselves. It's an epiphany that allows them to release some of the pain and regret, clearing the way for true healing. Emotional arc. At the start of the chapter, the protagonist is still in denial or avoidance mode, trying to protect themselves from the pain of the breakup. By the end, they face the truth head-on, which feels painful but ultimately liberating. They emerge with a deeper understanding of themselves and their role in the relationship's end, setting the stage for change. In short, Chapter 6, Facing the Truth, is about the protagonist's painful but necessary confrontation with their own flaws, mistakes, and the reality of the breakup. It's a key moment of personal growth, where they stop running from the truth and begin to embrace it as a path to healing. Chapter 7, Letting Go. Letting go is a pivotal moment in the protagonist's journey, where they make a conscious decision to release the past and fully accept that the relationship is over. It's a chapter about emotional liberation, letting go of attachment, guilt, and regret, and allowing space for healing and new growth. 1. Symbolic action. The protagonist may take a symbolic action to let go of the past, such as returning a keepsake, deleting old messages, or packing up items that remind them of their ex. This act isn't about erasing memories, but about freeing themselves from the emotional weight those objects hold. It's a deliberate step toward closing the chapter of the relationship. 2. Emotional release. Letting go is not just a physical act, but an emotional one. The protagonist might experience a wave of sadness, relief, or even anger as they finally let go of the lingering attachment to their ex. This is often accompanied by tears, a sense of catharsis, and the understanding that holding on was preventing their emotional growth. 3. Self-acceptance. In this chapter, the protagonist learns that letting go doesn't mean forgetting or devaluing the relationship. It means accepting that it has ended, and they are worthy of moving forward. They stop blaming themselves and start embracing the idea that they can grow independently. This realization is a key part of the healing process. 4. Letting go of old narratives. The protagonist also starts to let go of old beliefs or narratives that have held them back, such as the idea that they were not enough or that they will never find love again. They begin to shift their mindset to one of possibility, opening themselves up to new opportunities and realizing that the end of one chapter is the beginning of another. Emotional arc. At the start of the chapter, the protagonist is still emotionally tethered to their past, struggling with the idea of moving on. By the end, they experience a sense of release and peace. While the pain doesn't disappear entirely, they begin to feel lighter and more in control of their future. This moment marks the start of their emotional rebirth and readiness for the next phase of their life. In short, Chapter 7, Letting Go, is about the protagonist taking a definitive step toward emotional freedom by releasing attachments to their past relationship. It's a process of both physical and emotional release, where they come to terms with the end of a relationship and start embracing the possibility of a new, healthier future. Chapter 8, Moving Forward. Moving forward is a critical chapter in the protagonist's healing journey, marking a significant shift from recovery to embracing new possibilities and a future without the weight of the past relationship. It's about transitioning from being stuck in the past to actively shaping a new, independent life. The protagonist is not simply letting go anymore. They are actively engaging with the world around them in ways that are meaningful and forward-looking. 1. pursuing new goals and personal growth. In this chapter, the protagonist starts to focus more on their personal growth and long-term goals. They may revisit or discover new passions, such as taking up a new hobby or investing more time in their career. Perhaps they begin taking steps towards something they always dreamed of, like going back to school, writing a book, or starting a new business. This shift symbolizes the protagonist's commitment to moving forward, no longer trapped in the past, but striving toward a future that excites and fulfills them. The key here is that these goals aren't about filling the void left by the breakup. They are authentic desires that reflect the protagonist's evolving identity. They are creating a life that is driven by their own aspirations, not by the expectations or compromises made in the relationship. 2. New social connections. While the protagonist isn't rushing into a romantic relationship, they begin to interact more with new people, either casually or meaningfully. This might involve deepening friendships, attending social events, or simply opening up to new experiences. Meeting new people, whether through mutual friends at work or in other social settings, helps them re-enter the world with a fresh outlook, one that isn't clouded by the past. There might also be subtle hints of romance, where the protagonist finds themselves attracted to someone new. However, this attraction is more about exploring the potential for love without the pressure of trying to replace the ex. It's a natural step in healing, realizing that new connections don't erase the old, but enrich the protagonist's life in unexpected ways. 3. Building emotional strength and independence. By this point, the protagonist has undergone significant emotional growth. They no longer rely on their ex for validation or closure. They begin to see themselves as whole and capable, not defined by the past or the relationship. This newfound emotional strength is displayed in their actions and decisions. The protagonist may take on challenges, whether in their career or personal life, that they would have once shied away from, now trusting in their ability to overcome obstacles. This independence also extends to their emotional life. They may not feel the need for constant reassurance from friends or family, as they've learned to validate their own feelings and experiences. They are beginning to feel comfortable in their own skin, learning to enjoy their own company without the fear of loneliness or rejection. 4. Setting healthy boundaries. As the protagonist moves forward, they start to set boundaries, something they may have neglected during the relationship. They recognize the importance of saying no to things that drain their energy or don't serve their well-being. This could be setting limits with friends, family, or even ex-partners. The protagonist learns to protect their emotional space, understanding that maintaining boundaries is key to building healthy relationships going forward. This also applies to their internal boundaries. For example, they may stop ruminating over past mistakes, no longer allowing negative self-talk to hold them back. They stop letting past fears or insecurities dictate their choices, instead choosing paths that reflect their newfound sense of self-worth. 5. A sense of peace and hope. As the chapter unfolds, there's a growing sense of peace. The protagonist has come to accept that the past relationship, while important, was not the defining part of their life. They have moved beyond the pain and regret and are now focusing on the present and future. This peace comes from their own resilience, the work they've done on themselves, and the understanding that they are in control of their own happiness. The protagonist also feels hope for the future. While they may still have moments of doubt or loneliness, they now believe that love, happiness, and fulfillment are possible again, not just through another relationship, but through their own growth. They have developed a healthy relationship with themselves, and that's the most important step in moving forward. Emotional arc. At the beginning of the chapter, the protagonist is still processing the emotional aftermath of the breakup, but is beginning to feel the shift from being stuck in the past to engaging with the world again. By the end, they are more comfortable in their own skin, beginning to envision a future filled with potential, and more open to both new experiences and the idea of love. They are no longer trapped in grief. Instead, they're actively moving forward with optimism and a sense of renewed purpose. In essence, Chapter 8, Moving Forward, is about actively engaging with life beyond the breakup. The protagonist isn't just healing. They're living again, setting goals, building new connections, and discovering their independence. This chapter reflects the process of transformation from someone who is defined by their past relationship to someone who is confidently stepping into their future, ready to embrace new opportunities. Chapter 10, The New Beginning. New Beginning is the final chapter that brings closure and signals the protagonist's complete emotional and personal transformation. It marks a true shift from the past and sets the stage for the future. This chapter is about embracing what's ahead with confidence and hope, building a life that is independent, enriched by self-discovery, and open to new possibilities. It's not just about moving on from a relationship. It's about flourishing in new ways. 1. Deep reflection and acceptance of the journey. The protagonist reflects on everything they've been through: the heartbreak, the self-discovery, the struggles, and the healing process. This reflection is crucial as it shows how far they've come. They realize that every difficult moment, every tear shed, and every painful decision was a step toward personal growth. They understand that they are no longer the person they were at the beginning of the story. The protagonist has transformed from someone who felt lost and broken to someone who feels whole, even without the relationship that once defined them. This self-realization is crucial for closure, as it allows the protagonist to fully accept both the past and the lessons it taught them. 2. Reaffirming new beliefs about love and self-worth. At this stage, the protagonist's view of love has evolved. They understand that love isn't something that can be forced or controlled. It's about mutual respect, emotional health, and shared growth. They now know that love starts with self-love. This newfound understanding of their own worth, without needing validation from another person, is a key part of their transformation. This internal shift sets the foundation for future, healthier relationships. They are no longer defined by their past relationship. Instead, they are empowered by their journey and the lessons they've learned about both giving and receiving love. 3. Taking action toward new beginnings. The protagonist's decision to move forward is now more than just an emotional release. It's a physical manifestation of their change. They might take significant actions that represent their new beginning. This could involve making a big life change, perhaps relocating to a new place, starting a new job, pursuing a long-neglected dream, or even reconnecting with lost passions. It's an outward reflection of internal shifts they've gone through, symbolizing a break from the past and the beginning of something new. The protagonist may feel nervous or uncertain about the changes, but there's a sense of excitement because they're finally taking control of their future. 4. Opening up to new relationships. While this chapter is not about rushing into another romantic relationship, the protagonist is now open to the possibility of love or deeper connections. They may meet someone who represents a fresh start, someone who challenges them in healthy ways, teaches them new things, or simply brings joy without the emotional baggage of the past. This doesn't necessarily mean they will start a romantic relationship right away, but it's a sign that they are no longer closed off or afraid of opening their heart again. Alternatively, the protagonist may focus on the relationships that are already in their life, deepening their friendships and familial bonds. They now understand that love can take many forms and doesn't always have to be romantic. 5. Embracing the future with hope and possibility. The closing moments of the chapter reflect the protagonist's growth into someone who is hopeful about the future. They no longer carry the weight of their past mistakes or regrets, as they have made peace with their journey. There's an underlying optimism about what's to come, knowing that they are capable of handling whatever life throws their way. The protagonist has learned how to embrace uncertainty, not as something to fear, but as an opportunity for growth and new experiences. They've learned to live in the present, not weighed down by past heartbreaks or fears of future failures. 6. A symbolic gesture of moving on. The chapter might include a symbolic act that helps the protagonist embrace their new life, such as donating or letting go of personal items that once held emotional significance, like gifts from their ex. This gesture isn't about erasing memories, but signifies the final release of the past. It's about making space for new experiences, new relationships, and new possibilities. Emotional arc. The protagonist's emotional state evolves throughout the chapter, from a place of contemplation and reflection to one of confident acceptance and renewal. At the start, they may feel a bit uncertain about what the future holds, but by the end, there's a sense of calm and strength. They are no longer stuck in the past or grieving the relationship, but are instead empowered by the lessons they've learned. They are ready for whatever new opportunities life presents, knowing they have the emotional resilience to navigate them. In short, Chapter 10, the new beginning represents the protagonist's final shift from healing to thriving. It encapsulates their emotional and personal growth, showing that letting go of the past has allowed them to embrace their future with hope, confidence, and excitement. This chapter marks the protagonist's readiness to move forward, no longer defined by the past, but empowered by their new perspective on love, life, and self-worth.